As a kid, I can remember every afternoon after school, I would come home and there would always be one of three shows on TV. Spider-Man the Animated Series, X-Men the Animated Series, or Ben 10. Later on, when I was around 7 or 8, Spectacular Spider-Man was released. And this was my show. I loved it. But much like most things I love, it got cancelled. Sure, Ultimate Spider-Man replaced it, but it wasn't the same. I didn't know why at the time, but now I do. Animated superhero shows just aren't being made as serious products anymore. The shows that I grew up with were for kids, but could still be enjoyed by adults. The overarching storylines straight from the comics. Now these shows are just made to capitalize on whatever's popular at the time. Guardians of the Galaxy is popular. Let's make a show about them. Hulk is popular. Let's make a show about him. However, with the recent release of Into the Spider-Verse, Marvel has shown that they can do serious animated stuff. So why can't their shows share this quality? And that reminds me of a show that came out in the late 90s called Spawn. This show was solely made for adults. There was a lot of language that was used that was, swearing. And there was a lot of violence and blood, gore, etc., etc. And if I were to make a show, I'd probably go for something that blurred the lines of the two, kind of like the tone that the MCU goes for, because it works, and it's popular, it's familiar, and yeah, it just works. That being said, let's make a Spider-Man show. A large inspiration that I will use for the show, J. Michael Straczynski's run. In my opinion, it's a perfect run for a show. And when I say that, I'm talking about the early parts of the run, not the weird bits at the end where Peter makes a deal with the devil, or Gwen Stacy has sympathy sex with Norman Osborn, and their two kids show up trying to kill Peter. As for art style, I would probably go for full CG, as opposed to hand-drawn. Kind of like a mix between Transformers Prime and that Green Lantern show that no one watched but me. And more people should definitely watch it because it's actually really good. This style of art also is similar to the art style of one of my personal favourite Spidey artists, Humberto Ramos. And before anyone says anything, no Wolverine. Definitely no Wolverine. Ugh. We start the series off, and Peter has been Spider-Man for around a week. He's still learning his powers. He's using his newfound abilities to take down the gang that his uncle's murderer belonged to. Later learning this gang is run by Wilson Fisk, an untouchable crime boss who owns most of New York City. After a fight with Bullseye, an assassin sent by Fisk, Spidey learns that he's not the only vigilante looking to take down Fisk. A blind lawyer shows up at Peter's home, asking Peter as a witness for an investigation into his uncle's killer. The lawyer is then revealed to be Matthew Murdock. He is this other vigilante that's working to take down Fisk, and he goes by the name of Daredevil. He reveals to Peter that he is Daredevil, and he reveals that he knows Peter is Spider-Man. The two fight Fisk on the roof of Fisk's tower, but before either protagonist can decide whether Fisk should die, Fisk is shot in the head by Nick Fury. Fury offers a place in S.H.I.E.L.D. to Spider-Man, which he politely refuses, saying that he'd rather just be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man instead of being up there with the big leagues. The next day, on the way to school, Peter is approached by a stranger in an alley who has similar abilities to him. He reveals his name to be Ezekiel and that he knows Peter's secret identity and questions Peter on the true origin of his powers. Peter is obviously unnerved. Meanwhile, a new villain who shows up on a boat that has just stopped reading a news article on the Spider-Man Wilson Fisk fight. A few days later, Ezekiel shows back up at the school after just having donated a large sum of money to the school. After school, he approaches Peter again, this time with more urgency. Ezekiel explains to Peter how he got his powers and begins to explain why Peter's are the same. He mentions that Peter is a totem and other villains that he's fought in the series so far, Rhino, Vulture, Scorpion, etc., etc., are also totems. But because of their reliance on technology, they are not pure. Peter is. This will attract threats that feed on these totems, and Ezekiel mentions the name Morlun. Meanwhile, the mysterious figure that has been following Spider-Man reveals himself as Morlun, after draining the life of a random, strangely clothed figure, saying, "Whoever heard of a German superhero anyway?" Ezekiel takes Peter to a private bunker at the top of a skyscraper, having built the bunker a long time ago to shield himself from Morlun. However, now he sees that Peter, who's just a kid, is in danger. He decides to let him use it instead, saying that whatever's after him, Peter refuses to use the bunker, saying whatever's after him, he'll fight it. And if he dies, he dies. Morlun starts destroying the city, and Peter confronts him. They fight. Peter loses. No matter how hard he tries, nothing staggers Morlun, and Morlun is destroying Peter. Peter flees back to Ezekiel, but now Morlun has made contact with Peter, he cannot lose that scent. Ezekiel refuses to help. However, later when Spidey and Morlun fight for a second time, Ezekiel joins the fight. He seemingly dies in the brawl, but not before drawing some blood. He later uses his school lab to analyze the blood sample. He realizes that Morlun's blood is made of an amalgam of several different animal totems. And Peter goes to a nuclear testing facility, injecting himself with more radiation, leaving him unconscious for when Morlun arrives. When Morlun tries to absorb Spidey's life energy, he finds the extra radiation painful. Peter wakes, now stronger due to the extra radiation, and continues to beat Morlun to near death. The season ends with Peter lying on his bed covered in bandages, with Aunt May walking in to find his tattered costume on the ground in front of him. The cast is something that I had the most trouble with. I didn't know who to get to voice these characters. I eventually got down to just 6 characters that I wanted to be the main stars of my series or my season. For Peter Parker, who else but Yuri Lowenthal? He did a great job in the Spider-Man series, in the Spider-Man game for PS4, so why not get him to do a full series? I feel like he'd be up to the task. Plus, he's also played Ben 10 in a series, so he's not like, it's not completely alien to him doing a TV series or season. For Wilson Fisk, I can see Steve Blum giving this guy a distinct gruff voice, because I feel like Wilson Fisk should be more gruff. I feel like he shouldn't be distinguished. J. Jonah Jameson is someone that will always be in the background, always stabbing at Spider-Man. So I feel like, who else but J.K. Simmons? I mean, come on. I don't think I'll get any opposition on this. J.K. Simmons all the way. When it comes to Matt Murdock, James Arnold Taylor, his portfolio of voice acting is so huge that he's probably done something similar to Daredevil before, and I don't see him having any trouble with Daredevil. Moreland's difficult since he's never appeared outside of the comics, so I have no idea what his voice should sound like. However, looking at him and the way he talks in the comics, and just the way that he talks in general, I feel like Kevin Michael Richardson would do this guy's voice justice. Not all too familiar with his work, but he did the voice of Tombstone in the Spectacular Spider-Man series, and I've always imagined that Moreland's voice would sound similar to that. Both are kind of vampiric, and both are quite upper class as well. So I would imagine both would have quite similar voices. Ezekiel is the same as Moreland, but I can see Troy Baker knocking this out of the park. He does the voice of a concerned parental figure very well in The Last of Us, where he plays Joel. He's also not afraid to do superhero shows, having played Hawkeye in Avengers Assemble and having appeared as Batman in many DC animated films. That's kind of all that I have for my season. That's all that I think would really create a perfect Spider-Man show in my eyes. If I have any oppositions, if you think that doing Moreland is stupid, then let me know, because I know Moreland is not the most popular or the most liked of Spider-Man villains, but that's all I got. I just feel like Moreland works in a show if you don't go the full crazy Spider-Verse route. But anyway, that is my mock-up of a Spider-Man show. Hope you enjoyed.